behalf of the Alberta Regional Professional Development Consortium, I would like to extend our deepest appreciation and respect to our Elder Advisory Circle, who helped guide this project and bring it to fruition. Thank you to Elders Tina Fox, Betty Letendre, and Eulalia Running Rabbit, who's with us today. Your dedication to education is a tremendous act of reconciliation. We can only hope to bring as much awareness and truth as possible to this day. I would also like to thank our friend and colleague Donna Ross for her huge contribution to this project and for her words about this significant day. Orange Shirt Day and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a day that remembers the thousands of Indigenous children who attended residential schools and the children who did not make it home. As part of the learning of the impact of these schools, Orange Shirt Day and beyond guides an approach to share the true history with students, educators, and the school communities. It is a time of remembrance and reflection about the impact it continues to have on many Indigenous people. Our Orange Shirt Day and beyond resources honor, respect, and foster ways to learn about the legacies of residential schools, but also commemorate Indigenous ways of knowing, doing, relating, and being by promoting positive stories of hope and resiliency. We have with us today two panelists who will be here to support us, answer your questions as we explore sport and healing. And Eulalia Running Rabbit has joined us today. She is an elder from Strathmore, Alberta region. And Eulalia, some of you may recognize, was the star of our production last year, the New Blood Tribe, the New Blood video that we shared last year with all the resources. And we have had the honor and privilege to continue to work with Eulalia. And Eulalia, I'm just going to pass the mic over to you for you to have a chance to say hello and share a few words.
First of all, I would like to still say hello to everyone that's there. And thanks for coming out on this day. My name is Eulalia Running Rabbit, and I am from the Siksika Nation. So with that, yes, I am the mother to the student that went to residential school in the show of New Blood. And I'm very fortunate I get to meet Peter Gabriel on October 5th.
Wow.
He invited me and Deanna to come out and meet him. So that's a plus. You know, hearing that song, that honor song that was played, well, it brought tears to my eyes. I thought of all the children, not only the Native children, but all the children in the world. I think all children should be honored for who they are and what they are, like what they do for a living. It's really sad today that with this opium crisis we have, and it really did affect our children, like children on each reserve, everywhere. So with that, I my deepest respect for all children. Today is the day of where we celebrate the Every Child Matters. I guess if there's any questions you can ask, and I'm more than willing to answer.
And Jason, I don't know if you'd like to say a word or two. Jason Big Charles is joining us from the north.
Thank you, Madeline and Eulalia. Tansaka kyo papastim si kasun munyo si kasut Jason Big Charles, East Prairie Métis Settlement of Chania. So my name is White Horse. My colonized name is Jason Big Charles, and I'm joining you today from the East Prairie Métis Settlement, which lies in Treaty 8 territory, welcome back to those who joined us yesterday. Happy to have you back today. For those joining us, very honored to be asked back today to help support as we walk together toward reconciliation. Very honored to be here to support Madeline and especially our knowledge keeper, Eulalia. So, kinanaskom tinawaw, kakyaw. I'm very grateful to you all.
Thank you, Jason. Today we're going to start with a video clip about the white buffalo. And I'm wondering if Eulalia or Jason, one of you wants to just speak about the importance of the white buffalo. Brief little introduction, we do have the video.
The white buffalo, it's a special animal culturally, and it tells, when a white buffalo is born, it's supposed to relate to the future, to the indigenous communities of America. I think it's for the Americans, the white buffalo, especially in the southern states. They have more stories and honor for the white buffalo. So we, Siksika, we don't really know about it. Something we don't know. Everything in knowledge was passed down, and the white buffalo was not given to us. The white buffalo is a sacred animal that I'm aware of. What I wrote down here, I just jotted everything down really quick of what I know. So when the white buffalo is born, that means it's a good omen and a good future ahead. And for we indigenous people, the white buffalo also signifies receives with joy for the people and an abundance and change with the indigenous people and among the southern. And the white buffalo is very sacred. So I think 1 in a million, it's a 1 in a million rare occurrences. It highlights stories centered on 3 themes: meeting the herd and meeting the people and telling the story. In essence, it is a celebration of all things. Stories often have a deep meaning and can be passed on from generation to generation. In one story, the legend of the white buffalo woman is a very sacred story of the American indigenous. Many American indigenous, such as the Sioux, Cherokee, Navajo, Lakota, and Dakota, celebrate the white buffalo calf in their prayers. So as the story goes, the birth of the white buffalo calf goes a long ways from long ago. So that's what I know of the white buffalo. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Jason, if you want to add anything before the video?
Thank you, Madeline and Eulalia. Of course, as Nihiawak, as Indigenous people, we all have different teachings and different histories that as the teachings are passed down, and as well, both Eulalia and I, as academics, we have research and such as well and it's neat to see the research coincide with the traditional teachings and stories we're given. One of the teachings that I was given about the white buffalo was that it originated from a prophecy that actually came through from Lakota medicine man in the 1800s by the name of Black Elk. And the stories we in Cree country were given was that Black Elk had a near-death experience as a child. And during that near-death experience, he was given insight into a lot of the future of of our first peoples. And in one of those, the birth of a white buffalo calf was going to signify the resurgence or rebirth of the indigenous nation, and it's called the seventh generation rebirth, where the seventh generation will start to reclaim our languages, our cultural practices, our ceremonies. So, of course, nations since the early 1800s and Black Elk's vision into what's to come, we've been preparing for the birth of the white buffalo calf. And in the past years, there's actually been 3 white buffalo calves that have been born. So that in itself is a tremendous sign to Indigenous people that this is a good time for Indigenous, according to Black Elk, that we are in the 7th generation now. And I think activities like today are maybe proof of that, where we are joining together in reconciliation and starting to reclaim our language, our culture, our traditions. So those were the teachings I was given, and they sound very much in line with Eulalia's teachings as well about the rebirth of the Indigenous nation. Shamaga.
Thank you, Jason. 2 wonderful stories. And I agree with you. I think what we see happening right now is so positive, and I'm so excited about the work that we're doing right now to celebrate culture, sport, music, dance as ways to reconciliation. So thank you. And on that note, Alexandra, our crew went out and met with someone, and we have a nice video to share with you regarding the white buffalo.
A few years ago, we had a lot of tragedies in the First Nation community. A lot of the young men chose suicide, couldn't deal with life anymore. And one of them was a close relative, my auntie's only son. I went home to pay my respect. And when I was home, I wanted to stay back and help feed the people after. And my brother insisted that I go visit the graves of the people that have left. You know, and our graveyards are full. And he asked me, "Sister, what could we do to help our people?" You know, being the oldest of 3 boys, I had to do some quick thinking over the years, and I said, "It's time to bring the white buffalo back." And he looks at me and says, "Where do you find the white buffalo?" And I smiled and I was like, "I don't know, but I will ask Dogie. I will let Dogie know that he will help us find a white buffalo." You know, we needed a sign of hope, and I felt the buffalo would give that sign.
So it was January 2020, and called all over, mainly the United States, because that was the only place I thought there would be the white bison where I could locate them. Lo and behold, I did reach out and I talked to some people down in South Dakota, North Dakota, Missouri, Montana, and they all led me back to Canada. So there's a guy that moved from the United States into Manitoba. And I says, okay, well, that search is going to be shorter. It'll help me a lot easier because now we're in Canada. So I did call into Manitoba asking who owns these white bison. So I was led to a town, I forgot the name of the town in Manitoba. I talked to a reporter there and he says, well, actually the fellow that was here moved to Alberta. So my search was getting shorter. So I Again, I talked to the Bison Association, and they led me to a reporter in Red Deer. And that reporter gave me a number. Says, call this guy. So I called him, and there's a gentleman that answered the phone and asked for the gentleman's name. And he says, unfortunately, he passed away. And I said, I'm sorry to hear that. But that was his son, so he took over the operation. So what we did, Lisa and I, we says, well, let's jump in a car and go pay a visit. So I did ask him, can I come and see the white bison, the buffalo? He says, yeah, come out, but they're not for sale. That's fine. We just want to come and see them. Jumped in the vehicle and we head up to Sylvan Lake, and that's where the ranch was. The gentleman was standing in his yard. He got off, and that was the first question he asked. You know anybody from Native people in Manitoba? I says, well, yeah, I guess there's a few that I know. And he was talking about a gentleman, smart, brilliant, hard worker, athletic, and so forth. And I thought, interesting. So I asked him, well, who are you talking about? What's the name? He says, Kelly Bunn. So I gave him a smirk, and I said, see the lady in the car? He says, yeah. Well, that's his daughter. So he got all excited, ran around the car and giving Lisa's hugs and saying, I know your dad. Telling her stories about her dad and so forth. And we decided, well, I want to see the buffalo. So the first one I seen was Tomahawk. He was just 2 years old at the time. Nice looking animal. And then again, he did mention that they weren't for sale. So as we got talking, you know, the breeds and what the bloodline was, and I asked him a question. He says, what is the significance of you having bison, and particularly a white buffalo? He says, I don't have an answer for it. So he threw the same question back at me. And what I told him, the significance for First Nation people in North America with the bison or the buffalo was their survival. They provide them roof over their heads, the food, the medicines, and so forth. And he had a lot of questions. As we ended there, and I did tell him that, I did ask him, in the event that you want to sell these animals or the bison, we'd be interested. So he says, okay, no problem. And we went on our merry way, and a day or so he gave me a call. Says him and his wife talked about it, and he was really intrigued of the question I gave him, and he understood why we wanted to look at the white bison, why we wanted them. So it took him a few days, and he decided, okay, well, we will consider selling them to you. So for myself and Lisa, I felt that was, I don't know, it was given as a gift.
We offered the opportunity to others. The interest wasn't there. With what it is, asked Dogie if we could purchase them for ourselves. We applied for a loan. I didn't know we were applying for a loan, but we applied for a loan. And the next morning he came up, put his hand out. He said, congratulations, you're the new owner of White Buffalo.
There was a connection. We didn't know, of all the millions of people, who we got the buffalo from the gentleman and his wife. We're closely connected to Lisa's father. And I'm sure he really thought about that. They're such majestic animals. We've got this sense of, I don't know, it's just that connection you can, being with them every day is something else as well. They teach you of what this animal can do, the power it has.
I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I put my hands in prayer and I said, I will never complain. I will do whatever it takes. If this is the path that I'm to be on, then I accept it. And the journey is beautiful. You don't know who's coming through our gate, whether it's elders, whether it's the youth, but give that opportunity for them to be around the buffalo is priceless. You know, they come here with sorrow and a heavy heart, and they walk away with that understanding that there's hope for change. You know, they actually seen a white buffalo, you know, and how beautiful. A lot of people speak of looking into his eye. You know, I hear that over and over again. You know, it's something when you can actually look eye to eye to a white buffalo. You know, we never know who comes through our gate. Some days it's a charter bus of 40 elders, and that's such a privilege and honor to welcome them to the Blackfoot community. You know, being Cree, and you know, I always say welcome to the Siksika Nation, the home of the white buffalo.
I hope you all enjoyed the video as much as I did. It gives you pause, and it's really a wonderful thought that people can go and see the white buffalo and benefit from that feeling and that positivity and all the hope that it brings. So I don't know, Eulalia, Jason, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'll give you a moment. And I just want to mention to the participants that through the Q&A, you can post questions that may come to mind during the viewing, and we will take time throughout the session to respond to any questions that are posted there. On that note, Eulalia, Jason, would you like to add anything after viewing that video?
Well, I would say that kind of speaks for itself what Carlin and Lisa talked about. It's very interesting. Visualizing what they showed on the video. It's very special. And I forgot to mention that in my notes, that they had white buffaloes at their place. Carlin Big Snake and Mr. and Mrs. Carlin Big Snake, Lisa. So I'm speechless now because I think they explained everything right to the point about the white buffalo. It's a very sacred animal. And like what I talked about the honor song, I hope the day will come when we're going to that honor song with the white buffalo around with all the children behind it. That's my hope in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eulalia.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, I just see there's a question that perhaps you can answer, and they're asking, are the white buffalo endangered?
They're not endangered, but they are rare, very rare. Now, there are differences amongst the white buffaloes, because the ones we saw in the video there, those are actually bred from other white buffaloes. So it wasn't the natural process. There was one white buffalo that was born, and then they sort of worked it so that more white buffalo would be born. There's an island in British Columbia where there are white bears, similarly, and they call them the ghost bears because all the bears on that island are white, and that was through genetics way back where there was one white bear born, and from that all the offspring developed. They took on that white pigment, so they all became an island of white bears, ghost bears. So as well, that island is seen as sacred because again, that's a rare occurrence. But endangered, no. With the white buffaloes that we're taught from the visions of black elk, they were both they were the white buffalo that we watch for are the white buffalo that are born from two non-white buffalo. So the two black buffalo having a white buffalo offspring, that is a rare occurrence. Of course, we know that they're albinos, but very, very rare amongst all species. But endangered, no.
I think that was great, and I love your story about the ghost bears. Thank you. Well, next up, has anybody been to an Indian relay race? I'm telling you, I got to participate and see the first one a couple summers ago at the Calgary Stampede, and I thought, wow, how come they haven't had this addition to the Stampede before now? It is fantastic as a sport to watch as a participant. And we have a short video clip. We'll give Jason and Eulalia an opportunity after we view the video to answer any questions, or would you like to say something before we view it? You've both seen it.
I think I've only seen it once, and to be truthful with you, I think I'll let Jason and talk about that because
Okay, we can just talk about it after too.
Yeah, I think he would know more about it than I would, so I need to be educated on that too.
Excellent.
Okay.
Jason, do you want me just to play the video and we can talk about it after?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We'll watch the video and then we'll try and fill in anything they may have left out of the video.
Okay, here we go.
This is going to be a good heat right here. Yeah, there we go.
Indian horse relay racing. It's fast, gritty, and full of sweat and muscles, both human and horse. It takes an adventurous soul like champion rider Jay Pechu to pull it off. He makes it look easy. At 18, this is Jay's 5th season. He was introduced to the sport by an uncle on Red Pheasant First Nation in Saskatchewan.
It's a tough sport. It takes a lot of courage and braveness in you to do it bareback, nothing to hang on besides the hair and your own will.
Relatively new in Canada, Indian horse relay was introduced at the North American Indigenous Games and the Calgary Stampede in 2017. Teams take 3 laps around a track and switch horses every lap. The exchange means horsemen have to jump from one horse to another while it's in motion.
The exchanges is the best part. I love that part. That gets me.
The element of it has been here since time immemorial.
Boy, these guys got some horses and they can run.
Earl Wood is the voice on this track. He says this isn't just a sport.
We've had connections with these animals. These are our relatives, and they're every bit as warrior as the warrior that rides them. And with every stride, it's a stride of reclaiming our own coherency and our clarity about who we are as Indigenous people.
And it's a family affair. Teams travel in caravans of 20 to 25 people with grandparents and grandchildren. There's a women's division too, and kids as young as 9 compete on ponies.
I technically like watching the horses, and it's entertaining for me watching them get bucked off because, I don't know, it's just entertaining for me.
Maybe just having fun?
I really want to, accomplish something so I could tell them, I did something good for people.
For Jay, competitions will take him across the west coast of Canada all summer. And he's hoping to capture a 2nd consecutive championship.
Flying through on the back stretch, on the home stretch, and looking down on the ground and seeing how fast you're going, feeling the wind blow in your face and passing guys and getting past. It's just the best feeling out there, and nothing beats it.
For CBC Indigenous, Renee Lilly, Winnipeg.
A little clip book that gives us a little glimpse of what the Indian relay races are like. And here, Jason, let's give you an opportunity to expand a little.
Thanks, Madeline. I'll tell you what I know about the Indian relays. I've been to a few, and I did get to hear some of the stories behind the Indian relay race. Now, of course, from my teacher side and teaching history and everything, we were always taught that, of course, horses came to the Americas upon first contact with the Spanish. Which, however, as First Peoples, we've always refuted that and said, no, we've always had horses. And just lately, within probably the past 5 years, there has been archaeological evidence that supports that horses have been here for well over 10,000 years. So the teachings that I was given from elders about the origin of Indian relay actually came from in the past what the tribes used to have with their allying tribes were runners, and these runners would be running, actually literally running from camp to camp delivering messages. And I think there in Calgary country, there's even one of the most well-known runners among most of the nations was Deerfoot, who was actually before he became chief, he was a runner who were told that could run run as well or better than any of the athletes we have today competing in the Olympics. But from those runners, they decided they needed something a little quicker. So they started using horses. And that's where that relay fashion happened, where if they had to visit a tribe miles and miles away, of course, you can't run a horse miles and miles. You've got to switch. So they'd have relays from tribe to tribe where these runners for messages would come racing in on a horse, go to the next tribal village, jump on a horse and continue riding, passing on the message to the allying tribes as he went. So we're told that that's where the origin of this Indian relay came from. Of course, after first contact, a lot of that was stopped because it was basically the messaging system between nations. So of course, one of the first things the colonizers decided to do was stop that whole messaging system. So from there it started to resurge again in the early 1900s, but it came through in the rodeo circuit, where they would at the gatherings they would put on a show of the Indian relay, just showing how fast they could ride and how athletic the riders were, because it takes a lot of skill to be able to ride a horse bareback. Imagine if you tried to get on a horse without a saddle. It takes a lot of strength and skill just to stay on that horse. And these horses are running as fast as they can. So it could be very dangerous if you fall off at those speeds. So normally in the Indian relay race, there are actually four competitors. So of course you have the rider who definitely has to have the most skill and strength to be able to stay on the horse. And you have two, some call them muggers, some call them holders. But what they do is those two people are actually catching the horse as the horses come in. They stop the horse, they hold it while the rider, almost in a fluid motion, jumps from one horse and goes to jump on the other horse. And that's the job of the fourth person, is they're holding the fresh horse, and they'll normally go through three rounds of this. So they jump on one horse and they ride as fast as they can around the track, come in and try not to stop. The muggers will grab the horse. The rider will immediately jump off once the horse stops and jump onto the next one and do another round. And they go through, like I said, 3 rounds of this. So it's a really fast pace and it's really exciting to watch.
Really exciting to watch. I will support that for sure. It was a lot of fun at the Calgary Stampede the one year I got to see it. We just were like, what a sport. Jason, can you talk maybe a little bit about how revitalizing this is part of that cultural and sport revitalization to build? Because not everyone is going to do it through dance or music, or so maybe we could just expand that a little bit.
Well, just like in any culture, of course, our first people's cultures were no different. We had, much like looking at the Olympics, you have people who excel at certain sports. It was no different with our first peoples. We had peoples who were expert hunters, we had people who were expert gatherers, we had people who were expert riders. And the Indian relay race is very much a showcase of the skill and strength of our traditional Indian riders who could jump on these horses bareback and start riding out, whether it was for carrying messages or going into battle. But it definitely took some strength and skill to do that. And just like any practice of Indigenous people, it's something that's slowly coming back to us because a lot of this was outlawed. Indian relays were outlawed because they were seen as very much like a powwow. Any kind of gathering or coming together of nations was greatly frowned upon at the time of colonization. A big part of that decolonization and reclaiming something that is uniquely First Nations, where this is something that our forefathers did, and we're going to take it up again and take the lead on it and bring it into the light proudly as Indigenous people.
I think those who participate will really, really gain, because it's just such an awesome sport and experience for all. So thanks for sharing that, Jason. Before we move on at all, I see that there were a few questions about the buffalo. And I just want to mention, if you have any questions and we missed them at that point, we will come back to them at the end. And I invite anyone with any questions about the Indian relay races to add them to the Q&A. And thank you, Jason, for that background. That was excellent. Really appreciated. I think that now we're ready to talk a little bit about lacrosse. And I'm just going to say lacrosse is a sport that's near and dear to my heart. And I have a son who plays lacrosse. He's in his mid-20s. He plays in a league out in Ontario. And in Alberta, when he started playing lacrosse, I wasn't aware of the close ties it has to the First Nations. And his first tournament in Ontario was at Six Nations and at the Akwesasne Reserve. And they had an opening ceremony that I had never seen such dance, music, art, everything brought together before a lacrosse game. And it was absolutely beautiful. And they took the time at that tournament to really explain to all the players and participants, you know, the importance of the game of lacrosse to the First Nations people. So I'm really thrilled today to have the opportunity to bring lacrosse to the forefront. And I think we'll start with the video again, and then we'll give Eulalia and Jason a chance to add to it and to answer any questions you may have.
It's a gift from the Creator. It's a medicine game. It's a game that has historical and spiritual connections.
Traditionally, lacrosse would have been known as stick and ball in whatever language you were speaking. Some nations would call it little brother of war. Lacrosse is a much deeper game than what it is on the surface level. A lot of people don't realize the depth that comes with a game like this.
You're carrying on your own traditions, you're carrying on a lifestyle, you're carrying on something that's embedded into our genes. That's us, that's what we are.
I have two older brothers who play lacrosse. My dad was their coach. When I was about 5 years old, the team needed players, and my mom was looking around the arena and couldn't find me, a little bit panicked, and then there I was out on the floor with a bunch of lacrosse gear on, playing the game.
What was taught to me was that the game was played if there was a drought, if there was a conflict, if there was a war, if there was starvation, if there was disease. Somebody would take it upon themselves, say, let's have the game of lacrosse. Let's play a game for the Creator to change what has been happening to us, something negative.
I was always taught that you don't just step on the floor for you. You step on the floor for people who can't do it anymore. You step on the floor for people who are not around anymore. And you step on the floor for the sense of the pride of where you're playing.
The whole community is engaged in playing the sport, in the preparation of the sport, of the preparation of the game, the choosing of the number of players, how many goals we win, how do you set up the field and that, and the feast that goes with it too, the offering to each other and also the offering back to the Creator. All of that was part of the preparation.
Traditionally, the game was considered a gift from the Creator. It would have been used for various different reasons. One is to bring entertainment to the communities. Another reason would be to prepare the youth for their future, whether it would be hunting and gathering of food or preparing for battle. Another reason the game would have been played is to settle disagreements between different communities and to also heal those community members. So at the time, being able to put down some of those traditional medicines and having a game to be able to create that environment for the healing is how the game would have been used traditionally. These days there are different versions of the game, and there are a lot of opportunities for men and women in the game today.
To hold a wooden stick it's like on a cold day if you grab a warm blanket. To me, that's what that feeling is, to put it in your hands, to put a ball into it, start playing with it. You pick it up, and right away, I would feel the hands of my ancestors on my back, looking over me, pushing me forward, telling me I'm doing good, and applauding. Even if I was just playing catch by myself, that's what I would feel as well. Because you're carrying on your own traditions, you're carrying on a lifestyle, you're carrying on something that's embedded into our genes. That's us. That's what we are. That's in our blood.
Plastic sticks had just been invented within a few years of me being born. So I was one of the first generations that started using a plastic stick, but our pockets inside of the stick were a traditional stringing. So we still had the same leather strings that were in there. The lacrosse stick that I used for the majority of my years as a youth, I still have the pocket hanging up in my room downstairs at my house.
The wooden stick is the medicine of the medicine game. It's a feeling medicine, a body medicine, it's a mind medicine, to put a wood stick in every player's hand to let them feel that history and deep teachings of lacrosse.
I teach the history of the game to every class that I work with. I've been teaching lacrosse in schools for just under 15 years now. When I finished high school, I wanted to get into Indigenous studies of some sort, so I ended up taking an Aboriginal studies program at college out here in Vancouver, and that's where I ended up learning a lot of the history of the game and the origins, just out of curiosity. I wouldn't have known that 15 years later I would have been using that information to share with students in schools. In my mind, that's the reason I have a position to be able to share the game, is because of that history. So it's important that every student who has mastered all the basic fundamentals of the game, that they should know where the game originated from as well.
It's important that when you play the game, for our communities, it's scheduled as an event for the whole community. Sure, the game itself will take on that competitive nature of a winner and a loser, but we try to play it is that by competing in the game, we're all winners. After the game, there's no hard feelings. You know, we all participated in somewhat of an event. And if you play the sport and you love the sport, you want to play for it like that.
I see the healing in schools today, and sometimes I'll see a student with autism who is a little reluctant to try lacrosse at first, and then at the end they don't want to leave. We've had a lot of times where students have cried because they don't want lacrosse to end. And that, to me, like a lot of times I feel my own emotions, like my eyes will well up a little bit when I see being so drawn to the game, and I see it, and I feel like that's the medicine continuing on in this contemporary version.
To us, it's a sacred game. We play it for the pleasure and amusement for the creator. But who represents the creator? It's the spectators that come to the game. It's the youth that come to the game. You play the game for them, and in doing so, you embody the values of what this game is all about.
I have to say one thing that really stuck with me is when he said it's for the First Nations, it's not a game, it's an event. And that, when I talk about the experience at Akwesasne and the Six Nations Reserve, it was an event. It was very powerful. So Jason, do you have any reflections? I have a few questions here. I don't know if you want to start with your reflections or.
Sure, maybe just to add to what the video was telling us about lacrosse. Very much it wasn't seen as a game. It was very much almost ceremonial in nature originally, because it originally came out generations before first contact. And we are told that it originated specifically from the Haudenosaunee Nation, which is of course part of the Iroquois Confederacy. And from what I've learned about lacrosse, it was originally developed as a mean of almost military training for young warriors, where it honed their skills and kept them athletic, being able to run and compete with their allies, gaining the skills needed for especially picking up the lacrosse stick and then throwing that ball with skill. It does take a lot of skill and stamina. Even with the lacrosse, it's a very fast-moving, exciting game, and very much like hockey. Watching if you're into lacrosse, it's very much as though you're a big fan of hockey, and you get just as excited about what's going on in the arena.
They
But
score way more goals.
yes, way more goals. But originally it was for honing skills, and the young braves would be challenged by the older braves and testing their skills and stamina, and it used to be a lot more physical, where there was some actual battling for the ball in the sport. However, later, as the Haudenosaunee started playing this game and bringing it within the Iroquois Confederacy, it started to become more competitive in nature, but not in the sense of competitive sport. It was actually used to settle disputes. So if we had two tribes within the Iroquois Confederacy that had a disagreement, they would, rather than go to war or rather than make it a, a bad confrontation, they would decide to have a lacrosse game to settle the dispute. Rather than any bloodshed, they would test one tribe's warriors against the other tribe's warriors, and that would settle the dispute. However, again, that brings back the nature of training the braves and the warriors and even the hunters, honing their skills through the use of this, what later became a sport.
Thanks, Jason. And I just want to give Eulalia an opportunity if she has some reflections she'd like to share following that video, or anything about the game of lacrosse, the sport of lacrosse.
From what I saw and from what I heard, it's healing. It's for healing, or like I guess it would be like the holy hand game that we have here in Siksika. It's called the holy hand game. And you know, it's a healing, hand game, like that they compete against each. There's two groups of hand game players. So I think it kind of like, for us, like there's in the native people, I think there's always something for healing. And I think that for the I always do believe that lacrosse is from down east. It comes from down east, and I think that's what they use it for. Whereas we use the holy hand game for here. That's how I see it. It's for every native sport. I think it's for healing in some way.
It's interesting that you say that, Eulalia, because my first question was, are there any games or sports other games or sports that are considered a medicine game?
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
There is a question posted from Mrs. Janvier's class, and they're wondering how different were the rules in lacrosse back when it was first played?
Actually, when they were first played by the Iroquois Confederation, it would depend on the hosting nation, and the rules would always change depending on the nature of the game or why it was being played. If it was settling a dispute, of course, there would be a little bit more rules on how the winning team was determined, like not just how many goals they could score, but like I said, it was a lot physical in nature. There was, much like hockey, there was checking and and stuff like that. But it was a very physical game because remember, they were using this as a means to or as an alternative to going to war. So of course it's going to be physical. However, not to the point where somebody is really hurt or bloody or anything like that. Just to the point where they get the opportunity to show their strength. But it depended on the nation that was hosting. They would make the rules. This is how many points we're going for. These are the rules. You can't strike anyone with your lacrosse stick or things like it would be up to the nation. So they would, of course, change.
And even today, if you look at, there's box lacrosse, there's field lacrosse, there's, different rules in different leagues even of the same sport of box. So I think that happens in a lot of sport as we try to officialize it and formalize it. The next question from Mrs. Janvier's class is, when was the first lacrosse game played? I think we can guesstimate that would be very hard to pinpoint. Hey, Jason?
Yeah, that would be very hard to pinpoint because by the time of first contact, lacrosse was already well established within the Iroquois Confederacy. So it could have went generations back from there.
And it is a long-standing sport across Canada, and we really do, personally, I feel, see a lot of growth in the sport. I think it's been really popular in Ontario and British Columbia, but we're really seeing the sport growing across North America. And if you look at the amount of teams right now in the National Lacrosse League, that's evidence that it's a growing sport. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I highly recommend the Calgary Roughnecks for anybody in the area. I think, Jason, I see there's quite a few questions on the white buffalo and our time is coming to a close. So maybe we could address a few of the questions regarding the white buffalo. So the first one is, how many countries have the white buffalo?
In all actuality, they're actually not called buffalo. They are actually bison. So here in the Americas, we have bison, and bison exist only in the Americas. They were just called buffalo because upon first contact, they look very much like the European buffalo. But buffalo only exists in Europe. However, here, our bison, which we call buffalo, only exist in the Americas. So North America, South America, mainly throughout Central and Northern United States and all the way up into southern and central Alberta is where they were most common. But yeah, we are our Turtle Island here of the Americas is unique in having our buffalo.
Another question is, how long do buffalo usually live?
Your average buffalo will live anywhere from 7 to 12 years. The average is around 12, 13 years. However, they have been known to live up to 20 years. In terms of bison, they actually have a very long lifestyle. Because if you look at something like a moose has an average life expectancy of maybe 10 years, 8 to 10 years. So with a buffalo able to live to 20 years, that's actually a very long life for an animal like that.
Jason, your knowledge astounds me. It's incredible. Thank you so much for being able to answer all these questions. This one,
Well, they're very similar questions that I've always had, and I usually like to go look for the answers as well. So, and I'm sure all of our knowledge keepers are the same. I know Eulalia is probably exactly like me. I want to know.
Thank you.
I think someone has an easy question for you. It's where did you get the buffalo skull from? And I'm thinking it might not be a buffalo skull. Is it?
Yes, this is a buffalo skull, and it was actually gifted to me from an elder. Prior to working as a consultant, I was, of course, a specialist in land-based learning, and I was taking buffalo into schools, and we were teaching them about the buffalo and then how to butcher a buffalo and how to share the meat and everything. And it was actually an elder who came up to me, and an insightful elder, and they said, you've been guided, you're being guided by the buffalo, so you need to keep a buffalo with you. So he actually gifted me this skull and said, it's become my guide in my teaching. So that's where my buffalo came from.
Great questions.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead, Eulalia.
I said that's really interesting to know.
Yeah. And there's
Guidance
a
of the
personal
buffalo.
question for you, Jason. I'll just throw it out there. You could answer it quickly, but they want to know if you're related to Muñoz.
Actually, that depends if you mean the last name Muñoz, or in Cree, Muñoz is what we call white people. So if we're looking at the term Muñoz in Cree, yes, I am. I am, not only is, I have French in my ancestry, my great-grandfather was French. So yes, I am related to Muñoz.
That was one of the first questions we got. I feel like we've responded to all the questions. We're getting some thank yous. I don't know at this point if anybody has any further questions. I'd invite you to type them in the chat. Eulalia and Jason, if you have any final words.
All I have to say is, with all this, it's very interesting. I did learn from it, like it's like the grandmothers and the grandfathers, when they tell you stories, you like to listen, you like to visualize, like actually see what they're talking about. So this was a very educational to me. And all I have to say is, may the Great Spirit walk with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Eulalia. Jason, any final words?
Just it's hard translating our languages, and I think you, Lelia, will agree. Because when I say it's translated into thank you, but in Cree it actually is much deeper. It actually means my spirit has been lifted by what has happened. So when I say that means all of you have lifted my spirit today by this exchange. And I especially like to say kinanaskumptin to Eulalia as a fellow knowledge keeper, because all of you are helping Eulalia and I, because as knowledge keepers, we're not only tasked with carrying the knowledge, but more importantly, we're tasked with passing that knowledge on. So again,
thank you. yeah, vice versa.
My
Thank you,
heartfelt
Jason.
thanks to you both. I think that having you present today to answer the questions and to share from your perspective is absolutely essential. I'd like to just, if Alexandra, if you could take a moment, or Rock, and put the website Empowering the Spirit link in the chat for everyone, that would be great. I just want to mention that, you know, through this project, we have created a lot of resources. And what you're seeing this week is all in English, but I want, and I've noticed that there are some French schools participating French classes. I want those teachers to be aware that all the resources we're developing to explore these videos and to go further in these areas will be available in French and in English. And I'd also like to mention that they are on the Empowering the Spirit website, and Alexandra's going to be placing the link there. I want to thank all the teachers and students who took the time out of their day to join us today and to learn a little bit about the White Buffalo, the sport of lacrosse, and Indian relay racing. And I would like to invite you and remind you that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will be here again. We will be looking at Inuit culture and some throat singing and some drumming and their road to reconciliation as well. So on that note, I'd like to thank everyone. It's been a really powerful experience again today, and I look forward to tomorrow. So thank you all.